Thursday evening, the Belmont community hosted the ACEs Coalition of West Virginia to spread more awareness about the effects of childhood trauma. Our Jason Livia has more on this story.
Thursday evening, the Belmont community hosted the ACEs Coalition of West Virginia at the Belmont Community Building. Dr. Barb Brady, the awareness chair of the ACEs Coalition of West Virginia, defined ACEs as adverse childhood experiences such as physical, emotional abuse, divorce, or neglect. She said the goal of the meeting was to spread awareness.
A lot of people don't know what ACEs are, and I'm sure most parents, most families are not intentionally harming their children. And so a big goal is to let everyone know what adverse childhood experiences are and how damaging they are to children, and then to give them tools that they can overcome and move past it. And it's not about beating them over the head like you're a terrible parent. It's about giving them tools to do better.
Mark Childers, a peer recovery support specialist at the MOV Health Department, says the problem isn't truly drugs, but unresolved childhood trauma.
We don't really have a drug problem in this state. We have an unresolved trauma problem because people use drugs and alcohol to feel better, and that's how they get addicted.
Claire Solgit, the pastor at St. Mary's United Methodist Church, said that over her 26 years as a pastor for several congregations, she has seen many people who are dealing with the repercussions of an adverse childhood experience. She also says that community knowledge of these ACEs are limited.
There's always been people who have had adverse childhood experiences, or they have family members who have. They're dealing with addiction and other adverse effects, and they're just trying really hard to figure out what to do with that pain and that suffering. If there's anything we can do to prevent that or help with that, I think that's vitally important that we do it. I think we're probably pretty limited in our knowledge. This isn't new information, but the emergence of it and its importance and its linked to what can become part of people's lives down the road as they try to deal with these experiences, I think that is relatively new information for a lot of our community.
Childers says he wants people to know there is hope for both children and adults in the MOV.
There's hope. You know, there's hope for our children. We could help them not have to experience adverse childhood experience. My thing is, I would much rather prevent a disease than manage one after I get it. So let's prevent it, but also let's work with the people that already are suffering from it. And there is hope for both.
You can find more specifics on what an adverse childhood experience is, as well as resources and other information on our online article at WTAP.com. In Belmont, I'm Jason Livia. With WTAP News, this is Home.